Hello? Is it me you're looking for? I hope so. My name is Mark Roden, and today we're going to be going over the top 10 dirt cheap supercars that you could buy. These are not like the cheapest supercars because it's kind of hard to classify what is and isn't a supercar. So for those wondering like, oh, well, where's this car? There's that car. There's a very good possibility I just forgot about it, or I didn't think that it was a supercar, that I don't think it should have classified as one, and so I didn't include it in the list. So I was gonna say like these are the top 10 cheapest supercars you could buy, and I'll probably make that the title. But in reality, these are just some of the cheapest supercars you could buy. But without further ado, let's go right into the list with number 10. Number 10 is going to the Mclaren MP4-12C. The C stands for cool because it's a McLaren, and all McLarens are pretty freaking cool, man. Their price ranges from 100K to 130K, and yes, I know that's not cheap, but strap in because these are still supercars, so they're not going to be like a $10,000 supercar. And in my opinion, it's still pretty well worth it. They come with a 3.8 liter twin turbocharged V8 making 616 horses, and the car is rear wheel drive. Hello, partner. Now, ever since the MP4-12 came out, people have been, McLaren has been adding on to it. They made things like the 650S, the 600LT, and those are all just pretty much modified versions of the MP4-12. But the MP4-12 got forgotten about, so now you can find them for relatively cheap. I mean, yes, 100K is still pretty expensive, but it's a McLaren, man. Coming in at the number 9 spot is going to the new Acura NSX, and this is what I meant by like I don't know what would classify as a supercar, because the old NSX was classified as a supercar in the 90s, but nowadays, is it a supercar? If it is, then that's another cheap one, but if it isn't, then it's not a cheap one. I don't know, it's so hard. So the new NSX, however, has a price range of 100K to 150K, a little bit more than the McLaren MP4 before for sure, and it has a 3.5 liter twin turbocharged V6, which is weird, making 520 horsepower in its rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. Would you like the all-wheel drive version? Ever since the normal NSX came out, it's gotten a lot of hate for sure. A lot of people seem to think it doesn't look like the old NSX, and it doesn't look like it for sure, but it's still a really, really good car. And now they have the Type S. So if you have even more money to spend, you can buy the NSX Type S, and you're really just cruising for a Tom Cruising at that point. But the normal NSX, don't sleep on it. Just because, yes, it's not as cool as the original NSX doesn't mean it's not a cool car. Coming in at the number 8 spot is going to the first generation of the Porsche Cayman. This is one that you definitely can say is not a supercar. You could argue that it's not a supercar for sure, and I would honestly probably agree with you, but I don't know, I think it kind of is. They have a price used, obviously, of around 20K. They could be more expensive if they're in nicer condition, or even cheaper if they're in horrible condition. But they come with a 2.7 liter flat 6, making 245 horsepower, and they are rear-wheel drive. Obviously, 245 horsepower isn't really supercar territory, and so that's why I kind of said, like, if you say this is just a sports car and not a supercar, I would agree with you. I mean, it makes sense, but it's still a Porsche. The cars are meant to handle well anyway. Porsche isn't meant to be like a really fast and a straight line car, and it still handles like a supercar. And the Porsche Cayman is beautiful. It's one of my favorite Porsches ever built. Like, everybody always loves the 911 turbos, 911 GT3 RSs. Show some love to these Caymans, man. They're awesome. What if I told you you could buy a Ferrari for under $100,000, and not just like one of those old piece of junk Ferraris that nobody really wants? No, an actual cool one. Well, the Ferrari 360 you could find from the range of 75K to 100K, which is honestly mind-blowing, because the Ferrari 360 used to be one of my favorite cars. I used to drive it all the time in Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2. I used to love that thing, and now they're really cheap. They come with a 3.6 liter V8 naturally aspirated, which is kind of weird, making 400 horsepower, and it's rear-wheel drive. Obviously, 400 horsepower is like, I mean, you could make that in a BMW with just like a down tune and a downpipe and tune nowadays, but back in the day, that was a very high horsepower number. That was supercar territory. And so the Ferrari 360, if you're going to call a mid-engine Ferrari with a V8 in it not a supercar, you're wrong. Okay, you're wrong. This is a supercar, man. Yes, it's old. Yes, it's outdated at this point, and no, it's not that great in terms of its performance against like modern stuff, but of course not, man. The car was built in like 2002. Speaking of cars that are definitely out of their prime, but still an incredible option if you're looking for a dirt cheap supercar, number 6 is a Lamborghini Gallardo. pre-facelift. The new facelift version, you're definitely not finding for that cheap, but the pre-facelift are dirt cheap. They come from around the 100k to 150k range. I said dirt cheap, but that is obviously still very, very expensive. I'm nowhere near affording one of those anytime soon. And they come with a 5-liter V10 still. Yeah, that's right, buddy. You get the Lambo V10, making 493 horsepower in its rear-wheel drive. Again, I had to include at least one Lambo on this list, just like with the Ferrari. And yes, I know that 100k to 150k is not a cheap car by any means, but dude, you have a Lamborghini with a V10 making 500 horsepower. Okay, like that's worth it. 100k. If you got 100k laying around and you're watching this video, first of all, what are you doing with your life? It makes no sense. But second, buy yourself a Lambo Gallardo. Coming into the number 5 spot is going to a actually modern, not even modern, brand new supercar that you can buy for under 100k. It's the Chevy Corvette C8. I don't even want to hear it. I don't even want to hear it. Don't even start commenting down below. I don't care. The car has a price of, again, you get it new, but MSRP markups are kind of crazy right now, so around 60k to 100k, depending on which dealership you get it from. And they come with a 6.2 liter V8 making 490 horsepower, and it is rear-wheel drive. And yes, I've heard the argument before that Corvettes are not supercars and that they're sports cars. I disagree. I think a Corvette is by far a supercar every freaking step of the way. Every Corvette has been a supercar. Every Corvette will be a supercar. This thing is making 500 horsepower, okay? And this is the base model. You get a Z06, it's even more. You get a ZR1, which is probably going to come out pretty soon. It's going to be even more. These things are insane, and the fact that you can buy them for 60k MSRP is mind-blowing. Do you know what's even more mind-blowing? How underrated Dodge Vipers are, buddy. At number 4, we're talking about the Dodge Viper 2nd generation. Honestly, any Viper is pretty freaking cheap, except for the new ones. They're still pretty expensive. But the older ones, 3rd gen, 2nd gen, 1st gen, are cheap for what they are. I mean, the 2nd gen range from 20k to 70k, and that is well worth the price all freaking day. I love Vipers. They're so beautiful, dude. On top of that, they come with an 8-liter V10, making 460 horsepower in its rear-wheel drive. Again, yeah, I know 460 horsepower isn't great in terms of today's standards, but this car was built in the early 2000s, man. Okay, now I do want to make it very clear in case you are thinking about buying one of these, and yes, you can find a 2nd gen Viper for around 20k. It just takes a lot of time. I would say you're more likely looking at 50k, but I will say if you are going to buy one of these, Vipers have a very hard tendency to spin out, if you will, so be careful on that. But otherwise, it's a beautiful car, amazing car, with a freaking 8-liter V10 screaming under the hood. God bless him. Coming in at 3rd place, let's talk about the car that does it all, the Nissan GTR R35. I mean, it really just does check all the boxes at this point. And we are talking about the pre-facelift, by the way. The newer R35s, you're not finding for that cheap. The pre-facelifts, however, you can find for around 50k up to 100k, which is by far worth the money. I mean, it is so well worth the money. They come with a 3.5 liter twin turbocharged V6, which is very odd, but it makes 600 horsepower and it's all-wheel drive. 600 horsepower is literally supercar range. As we talked about before, the MP4-12, we've talked about with the Ferrari 360, Gallardo, those are all less horsepower than this car. On top of that, it's all-wheel drive. Okay, and it's not just all-wheel drive, it's Nissan's GTR all-wheel drive, so it's a very good all-wheel drive system. The car handles very well, has very good acceleration. It's front-mounted engine, so you have trunk space. It also has 4 seats. It's honestly incredible. Now, the obvious downside to it is since it is priced cheap and it's made by Nissan, the interior and like the luxury aspect of it is not high at all, but everything else about it is incredible. But we're going to be talking about him, the king of supercars, and again, a company that people seem to think are only sports cars, even though I heavily disagree. It's the Porsche 911 Turbo 997. You can find another 911 Turbo for even cheaper than that if you want to. You can find like the 996, is that what they are? They're like early 2000s ones. You can find one of those for really cheap, but the 997 ranges from 80k to 120k, and it comes with a 3.8 liter turbocharged flat 6 making 473 horsepower, and it is rear drive. Now, yes, again, it's a 911. People can say that it's not a supercar and that it's a sports car. I disagree. It's supercar priced, yeah, supercar performance. It's a supercar, dude. Like, I don't really get where people draw the line there, but in my opinion, a 911 Turbo is a supercar. Now, if you were to say like a 911 Carrera, yeah, that could be a sports car. I can understand why you would call that a sports car. 911 Turbo, though, that is a supercar. On top of that, the 997 is a very beautiful Porsche. Do not sleep on these cars. The 997s are just, oh my goodness. But coming in at first place, the best cheap supercar, in my opinion, without a doubt in my mind, honestly, is the Audi R8 first generation. We're on to the second generation at this point, but the first gen is massively underrated now because of the second gen. They have a price range of around 60K to 100K, obviously used, and that is for the V10 Plus, so yes, you can find a V10 Plus around 60K, and it comes with a 5.2 liter V10, making 525 horsepower, and it's all-wheel drive. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, that just sounds worse than the GTR in every way, and to be honest, it kind of is, but the thing is, I mean, you're looking for a supercar, right? A GTR, as it is, it definitely is a supercar for sure. It's not going to, like, grab the attention that a actual supercar will. The Audi R8 is, and let's be honest, you're probably buying a supercar partly for that, okay? And the Audi R8 also, a bunch of people on YouTube review this car and say that it's one of the best, like, daily driver supercars out there. Like, it feels like you can drive it to the grocery store and back and be fine, and that is amazing, honestly. With 500 horsepower under the hood, or under the trunk, and still being able to drive it around like it's a freaking daily driver, the Audi R8 absolutely deserves first place. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see in the comment section below. It's already 9 o'clock, and I have to get this video out by 10 o'clock, or else you guys don't like watching it for some reason. The YouTube algorithm works in weird ways. So I'm going to make this outro very short. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love each and every single one of you. Das vidanya, and have a nice night.